Primeval New Zealand, a pristine wilderness alone at the bottom of the world. For millions of years as the country stretched and grew, its unique wildlife thrived inside this isolated island refuge. Ruling the roost was a mighty bird, the biggest in the world. Today, only its bones remain, and much of its life and death is lost in the mists of time. But some of the gaps are slowly being filled in, casting new light on the living history of New Zealand and the lessons the moa has left for the future. Moa has stirred a mighty debate of science, speculation, and suspicion. The life of the moa and the early Maori is shrouded in mystery. The only record, a few marks on a wall. What caused the moa to die out is the subject of intense controversy. If it died out is another story. Only in the last 50 years have modern-day moa hunters made any real progress, picking over the great moa graveyards for clues on the big bird's life and death. Some believe the moa is still out there. Incredible stories in the odd photo provoke worldwide excitement. And some stories have yet to be told.
What sort of bird is that?
What the hell is it, you say?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, scientists dream of another major discovery, and the day genetic material in these old bones could see the mighty bird recreated. Real-life Jurassic Park. Only time will tell. But with dinosaurs and prehistoric life the subject of endless fascination, the tales of mystery and imagination surrounding the moa will inspire the Indiana Jones of tomorrow, and the great hunt will continue. Before humans arrived here, most of New Zealand was forest. Life here was good, and it was safe. No rats, no ferrets, no cats and dogs, no humans. This lack of predators allowed many unique species to thrive. There were more flightless birds here than anywhere else in the world, and many were giants. The bush was alive night and day, and the moa reigned supreme. Millions of years ago, all the great southern lands were locked together in a vast supercontinent called Gondwana. Slowly, this huge landmass split up. Trapped on various pieces was a large, flightless bird. On South American plains, this ancestral ratite evolved into the rhea. In Africa, it developed into the ostrich. Off the coast, Madagascar was the home of the massive elephant bird. In Australia, the ancestral ratite became the emu. In Queensland and New Guinea rainforest, it became the cassowary. And in New Zealand, it evolved as the moa and the kiwi. Brian Ree freely admits he's moa mad. A boyhood discovery of a stash of giant bones has led to a lifelong passion.
These moa bones were found in a coastal swamp in the Kapiti Coast, and they're quite probably several hundred years old. And this will give you an idea of the different sizes of the different types of moa. This is a leg bone of a large Dinornis compared with the leg bone of a small coastal moa. Both of these birds are adult birds, and it gives you quite a good graphic example of how the birds varied in size compared with this, which is a domestic chicken. This display will give you a good comparison of the different types of eggs of the ratites of the world. There's the emu, the ostrich, and this is a large model of a Dinornis moa, and you can get a good comparison with a domestic hen's egg. It's a great loss for the breakfast table.
It certainly was. A single Dinornis egg contained 4.3 litres of fluid. That's equal to 90 hen's eggs. The moa was the biggest vegetarian the world has ever seen. It dined out all over New Zealand, although different species lived in different places. Once there was believed to be as many as 37 separate moa species, but that number has been whittled down to 11, divided into 6 main groups. The Dinornis was huge. It could stretch up to 3 meters and weigh 250 kilos, but most moa were short and fat, some just a little bigger than a turkey. Geoffrey Cox puts meat on the moa bones. There's no room for artistic license. Science dictates everything. from the shape of the body to the colour of the feathers.
I had to have my mowers dull to satisfy the experts, which is in keeping with all New Zealand birds. New Zealand birds tend to be fairly dull, so all I could get away with was a bit of bright skin around the neck, things like that. People allowed me a little bit of breeding colour.
Moa relatives such as the cassowary have brightly coloured plumage and headdress, known as wattles.
As far as wattles and things go, I'd love to put them in, but I think if I did, people would immediately tend to think it looks less realistic. It wouldn't be the way they'd expect their moas. You can get away with a lot more in the photograph. You can actually photograph a real thing than you can in a painting.
To paint what he hopes is a realistic picture, Geoffrey has really boned up on his subject, studying the moa's extraordinary, almost reptilian skeleton.
The neck comes out the back of the skull there. In modern birds, it comes out the bottom there. So there's a right angle join between the head and neck. But it's coming out the back there, which is seen in snakes, but not in any other living bird.
The moa's also unique in having no trace of wings whatsoever. Its bulk was dictated by its rough diet, twigs, leaves, even flax, digested with the help of gizzard stones. The big birds could carry around 6 or 7 kilos to help grind up the food.
You'll see that a proportion of these are quartz stones, perhaps a third to a half of them are quartz. They're all very nicely rounded off, very similar to the stones that you find in a stream. And the same sort of process was going on in the moa gizzard as happens in a stream, wear and tear on the stones.
There are very few clues in this moa mystery, and none we can easily understand. Much depends on the imagination.
Scientists, much as they would like to make out that they're always coolly objective, have as much imagination as anyone else, some even more so. In fact, harnessing that scientific imagination into productive directions is what research is all about.
The scientific focus now is on imagining the moa as a living animal.
It's like detective work. You find bones in a cave or in a swamp, and you search very carefully in the mud alongside those specimens to see if you can find pollen from plants that might have grown around there, and then you try and reconstruct what the forest was like.
Once they reconstructed the ancient environment, the scientists realized the popular image of the giant bird was completely wrong. The moa couldn't have negotiated its way through the thick vegetation standing fully erect. Most museums had to change their skeletons.
If you look at the way in which the moa vertebrae join together, you realise that moas couldn't have gone around any more than we can with their necks and backs completely straight all the time, that basically their normal position was curved. Now, there's no doubt that moas could extend their necks to possibly feed on leaves from quite high up in trees. What would be the point of them having long necks otherwise? But they weren't like giraffes.
It's now widely accepted that New Zealand was directly shaped by the moa. Trees like the matai start off a tangled mess, but suddenly change when they hit about 3 meters. Here the succulent leaves would be beyond the reach of the browsing moa. Smaller growing shrubs protect their leaves with a dense mesh of inward growing branches. The tough outer stems have very little foliage.
So the moas would have had to cut their way into them. Some of the smaller stems they would have dragged off because they had very strong neck muscles. So we see it as a mechanical defence that slowed up the amount of, or the rate at which they could feed, and therefore the amount of foliage loss that the plants would experience, and therefore would make them more fitted to living or coexisting in an environment where moas were the main browsing animals.
All species of moa had very little eyes relative to their overall size. Perhaps they didn't see all that well. However, their nostrils were very well developed, and it's assumed, like the kiwi, the moa had a very good sense of smell. The elongated length and shape of their windpipe is similar to those in swans and cranes. But what sort of call the moa made, we can only guess. Possibly, it was similar to the remarkable call of its relative, the cassowary. It's likely the moa led a solitary existence or lived in very small family groups. Probably, they bred very slowly, starting about age 5 and then producing only 1 or 2 eggs each breeding season. In such a safe environment, the moa could look forward to living 20 years or more. The discovery of underground moa graveyards has been a goldmine for moa researchers. One of the most significant sites is the labyrinth of limestone caves in Honeycomb Hill on the west coast. These vaults have been collecting moas for 20,000 years, the bones perfectly preserved where they fell. But the moa didn't live down here. This is where they accidentally fell. If they weren't killed outright, they would have starved to death or attracted the attention of their only predator. Dwarfing today's birds of prey, the Haast's eagle had a massive wingspan, up to 3 meters. The moa, trapped in the cave, would have been a sitting duck.
It always landed from the side, with one foot on its rump and the other presumably at the base of the neck. And the claws were sufficiently long to go through up to 50 millimetres of flesh and through 5-6 millimetres of bone and into the ear sacs and kidneys associated with the pelvis, while the other one was grabbing repeatedly at the base of the neck where there are more ear sacs and blood vessels.
Despite the attention of the eagle, the moa thrived up and down New Zealand for millions of years, until one day the most dangerous predator of all arrived. Up till very recently, it was thought the first Maori arrived in New Zealand about 1,000 years ago, and their small numbers made little impact on the environment for several centuries. However, now it's believed the Maori arrived to stay as recently as 600 to 800 years ago, with large numbers making immediate impact on this land of plenty.
I think the news would have spread very quickly in Polynesia, so that we would have had arriving in New Zealand people from not just one island group, but probably from quite a number, all converging on New Zealand and going to different parts of the coast, settling there, exploiting the resources, and probably almost certainly a boom and bust type economy. Having dealt with the resources in one place, they just move on to the next suitable place.
In northern parts of the country, it was warm enough for traditional crops like sweet potato. But further south was a harsh climate like the Polynesians had never encountered. They were forced to become hunter-gatherers, and the moa was a plentiful and easy target.
It was a marvellous piece of protein which was, I suspect, very approachable. I think that there's no reason at all to believe that moas fled when they first saw man. I think probably quite the contrary. I think they probably just stood around and looked at people.
Maybe it was as simple as walking up to a bird and whacking it on the head. But in areas where the moa was crucial to human survival, the hunt would have been a regular and highly organized activity. Quite probably snares were set or pits dug and covered over on the moa's favorite tracks. Once in the hole, the hapless quarry were dispatched by wooden clubs or spears. The smaller species were harmless enough. The giants demanded respect.
A cassowary, for example, which is a similar sort of bird, is said to be able to disembowel a hunter with one kick of its foot. Very sharp claws and very strong legs. Moas would have been much the same, and their feet would have been very dangerous. They're big things, the biggest ones are the size of a small steer, and you'd want to have you'd want to get those feet under control right from the beginning.
There lurks in many people's minds this wonderful buffalo hunt of hordes of moas being driven into a blind alley or into a lagoon and mass slaughtered. There's no good evidence for that most moa hunting would have been done by one man hunting alone, or more likely a small group of men, related men, hunting together with dogs, snares and spears. We think of it always first in terms of food, but the bone was tremendously important as a source of raw material for fish hooks particularly, other small tools, and personal adornment, ornaments, beads, pendants, things like that.
Some of this bonework has been recovered from archaeological digs, but something else has survived that shows how much the early Maori depended on the moa. In South Canterbury, drawings on a cave wall tell a unique story.
You've got to think of the time that the Moa hunter Maoris were here, it was heavily forested,